And I am back for another Politicos talk here, and this one is, just another one to air some frustration that I've been having, and it's getting to the point where it is just absolutely driving me up the wall. And sometimes they say when you argue with an idiot that sometimes you can't tell who's who. Well, that is exactly how I feel when I've been arguing with some of these people out there. And let me kind of give you a little background here. Used to be, pretty heavily into, libertarianism. I still feel that for the most part I lean that way. And if you've gotten a hint listening to the prior episodes, I'm having a little split with some of the political allies that I align myself with. And this is one of the biggest ones. Drones. And the discussion of drones has been one that is just driving me up the proverbial wall, and I'll tell you why. When a tragedy happens, whether it be Aurora, Colorado, Newtown, just pick one, okay? And I'm on this side, and I will argue any day of the year that you cannot blame the firearms. You cannot blame the devices. You cannot blame an inanimate object for the actions of an evil human being, a psychotic killer. You can't. Because for every psychotic killer there is out there, there are millions of normal, level-headed firearm owners that wouldn't think of doing those things, okay? And you can't punish millions of people for the actions of a psychopath, someone who isn't even in the right state of mind, okay? So we get that out of the way. Can't blame the devices. But some of the very same people that stand next to me when I say that, and, we'll cheer together and, we'll fight for our firearms rights, are the same exact people that hate the crap out of drones. Why? Well, they say it's a fact. Drones kill innocent people. Okay. The bombs may cause collateral damage that does, in fact, kill non-combatants. I will grant you that. I won't say the drones do it, because the drones are not autonomous. Again, they are tools, they are manipulated, and they perform only the functions that they're told to perform. They're not going around randomly shooting innocent civilians. And again, that is a false argument anyway. It's one of the biggest straw men in the world. It's a horrible argument to begin with. And I've gotten in some fairly heated discussions, and they always end the same way, because I'll present the argument the way I'm about to present it, and it swirls down this toilet bowl where I'm making my points, and the other person simply just starts name calling, slinging ad hominems, and I think it's at that point that when somebody reaches that point that they're clearly out of arguments, or they don't know how to argue their point correctly, and they're just at that point becoming dismissive, and they just want to fling insults like, "Oh, you statist, you government fascist," or whatever. Oh, you know what? If you don't have an argument, you don't have an argument. Here's mine. Drones themselves are inanimate objects. They only do what they are told to do, just like a firearm. You can't one day defend firearms and demonize the psychotic users of them, and then the very next day, or maybe even the same day or later on in the same Facebook post, complain about how bad drones are. And I will usually step in and say, "Oh, I think you're mistaken. You're not mad at the drones. You're mad at the way they're being used or the missions." Statist. Oh, yeah, okay, that makes me a statist. Right. somehow pointing out the flaw in your argument and the inconsistencies in your arguments across a spectrum of political philosophy somehow makes me a statist. Right. Okay, well, how about this? I'm just going to tell you right now, you have to be able to separate the device from the mission the device is doing. If you don't approve of the way drones are being used to conduct the war on terror, then you need to say that. You need to be a little bit more specific. You need to say, I don't agree with the way drones are being used by XYZ agency. There is nothing wrong with that. That is an argument that you can make. You can't make the argument that drones are bad because they're not anything. They're not good, they're not bad, they're just things. And one of the biggest ways we get on this topic is usually there's some news article that says drones are going to be in XYZ county. Okay, well, they start talking about government control and manipulation and all this kind of stuff, and I jump in and say, hey, you guys seem to be more mad at the drones than the fact that they're going to be using them a particular way. And then, of course, argument eventually ensues. And the last one was a guy that was trying to explain to me that they shouldn't even be on American soil. That's how bad they are. And that blew me out of the water because this is one of the same guys that will defend firearms all day long for being inanimate objects that have to be manipulated in order to do anything that they have to do. So I point that out to him. I'm like, how are drones bad? There's nothing inherently wrong with a drone. No, they shouldn't be here. They shouldn't be here at all. We shouldn't even have them. Well, it sounds like you're mad with the way they're being used. There are good ways you can use a drone. No, there's no good way you could ever use a drone. Well, yeah. Off the top of my head, I would say search and rescue. That's a good way you can use a drone. You could cash in all the news copters for news drones. They have a better endurance in the air. They have a good video capabilities. That's great. No, they're bad. I don't understand. I mean, you're telling me that the devices themselves are bad, even if I'm telling you there is a parallel way they can be operated that is identical to the way we are operating other things now. We have helicopters that we send up on search and rescue. Honestly, I think given the capabilities of a unmanned aerial vehicle, it would actually be more efficient to use an unmanned aerial vehicle for a couple reasons. It has better flight time. It could stay in the area of action for a lot longer, over 24 hours for some models. The equipment, granted, can be on both a helicopter or a drone, but what you're doing by using an unmanned aerial vehicle instead of manned helicopters is that you take out the possibility that the human pilots or navigator or equipment operator can die in a crash. So you are taking, some risk out of the mission. And then pilot endurance as well. Pilots can't stay on site forever. Even if they go back and refuel, they got to go back out. And, that wears on them. When you swap out UAV pilots, the UAV crew in one box is flying around. There's another box that a UAV crew goes into. They set up. They sync video feeds, all that kind of cool stuff. And they switch a button and boom, drone is now under control of somebody else. That is incredibly efficient. And I'll tell you right now, if I am in some wilderness land and they're searching for me, use a drone. Please, save money. Take somebody's life out of the equation and try to find me. But they don't look at it that way. Drones are just bad. The news, the very same argument could be used for the news copters, same capabilities, just taking the pilot out of it. Same exact arguments. You could do weather experiments. Now, these things can fly into basically, weather systems that would be too dangerous for a manned vehicle to fly into. And from what I understand, I think NASA is actually doing that, as a matter of fact. They're flying drones in with weather sensors into weather systems that is just too dangerous for manned aviation operation. So I make these points, and said person is just completely dismissive of it. No, drones are bad. You're evil. How dare you say you're a defender of liberty and all this kind of stuff, and you need to take that label off. Are you serious, dude? Because my arguments are consistent. My philosophy is consistent across a spectrum of issues that somehow makes me not a defender of freedom. I don't get it. And if you've listened to the last few, you'll understand that I'm getting really fed up and tired with this groupthink mentality. And you know, just because one figurehead in an organization says something, everybody tends to follow that blindly and doesn't think about it. We all know that, you know, the Republicans and Democrats are just perfect at this. They've got it down to a science. Well, apparently the libertarians do too. If you defend drones as inanimate devices, they will try to tear your head off. They'll try to rip you a new one because you're defending drones. Oh my God, how dare you defend drones? Well, you know what? Then I don't want to hear you defend guns. The next time the gun grabbers come, I want you to shut up. Because the very same argument, the exact same argument that I'm using to defend firearms is the exact same argument I'm using to defend unmanned aerial vehicles. Great tools that have done great things to keep our troops out of harm's way, that have the capabilities to do things here in the United States that we need done, that can be done more efficiently than with manned aviation. Okay, now, I understand there is an issue of mass monitoring of the population. Nowhere have I defended that. In fact, I would like you to rewind the last 12 minutes and 44 seconds and find a point where my defense of drones in any way defends the mass monitoring of the people of the United States of America. Because for some reason, they seem to think that's what it means. They seem to think that if you support drones, then that automatically means that you support the mass monitoring of the United States citizenry. And I don't. You know, they're basically setting up a couple of problems here. There's a false dichotomy there, and it's just a loaded situation in their mind. You can't lump everything together. I love the devices. They're awesome. As far as the way they are being used, do I agree with the mass monitoring, the mass passive monitoring of the civilian population? Absolutely not. That would be incredibly unconstitutional. And no matter how loud I say that, no matter how many times I voice that, no matter, I could put it in big, bold block letters and tattoo it to homeboy's face, he still wouldn't get it. Somehow, there are people on the libertarian side of things that seem to think that the mass spying on the population and drones are completely synonymous and the exact same thing. I will tell you right now, the way you have the ability to separate firearms from psychos doing evil things is the very same way you need to be able to separate drones, the devices, from the missions they're on. I would love somebody to argue that with me. Anybody, left, right, center, libertarian, whatever. Especially a drone-hating libertarian. Because we're supposed to be on the same side. Unfortunately, your arguments, some of your arguments, are just not